Final hour overdrive continues. Brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line of the final score. We got Ryan Rishaug from Vegas later in the hour. Luke Willson from Vegas in just a few moments. Our boy Luke's on the scene as we speak. I guess the weather hadn't been great over the weekend in Vegas, but today it looked incredible. And you also got the waste management, right?
What a week. What a week.
Yes. Although
waste management, Hazy, is scaring some people. There's some mystery withdrawals.
Right. You got Xander, who's out. You got Rick Hovland. That's concerning. But I don't believe it's an elevated event.
It
I don't
was
think it's
last year,
signature.
not this year.
Yeah. So, and next week they're at Riv, right? So if you're at the Genesis, and I guess the Big Cat, he is going to be there. And
with his new tailor-made gear.
It sounds like Tiger's up to something. Like he obviously posted like.
Same vision.
Yeah, watch yourself basically, I guess, next week, right? You got to be on the scene. He'll be at Riviera all week, and he'll be there on Monday.
I just want him to make the cut and somehow be in the mix, as opposed to playing, the last group vibe on the weekend where he just squeaks in and he's done by noon, and it's like you got to watch the highlights of him play.
Yeah. Just
somehow the tour desperately needs a red shirt, tailor-made golf shirt on Sunday.
They really do. Because you're right, it's tough when it's like Jimmy Nance comes on at 3 and he's like, earlier today, Tiger on 2. Yeah, it's like, that was 4 hours ago, man.
Or they show him on the front 9 when all the leaders are on the back.
If he's off the back, that's tough.
But he does the ass grab, too. That's the concerning.
He won't at his own tourney. But you're right. Like he was legitimately banged up at Augusta. But remember, he made the cut, and then it was like, I'm out of here. I'm not playing anymore. And they had the rain delay, and it was a really complicated week.
Dude, I want to see great shots, no limping. I don't want to see limping. Right. Because limping usually means he's about to shoot 77 or about to miss a cut. Mm-hmm. It's just been time and time again. He looked okay in the Bahamas earlier at the Hero,
he looked pretty good.
His own tournament, but it's like I don't know.
He didn't shoot well though. Like he finished like 18th out of a group of 20. If it wasn't for Bill Zalatoris shooting like 15 over par.
Yeah.
Although this is the beginning, I guess, of him playing every month for the rest of the way, right? That's what he's saying. He thinks he can play Riv. I would guess the Players. He'll be at Augusta. Anyway, all right. Best bets later in the hour. He's ready to head down to Vegas for the first time.
Let's do it.
Here's our main man, Luke Willson. Big part of Team Owen Wilson. There he is. Oh, the hat made its way through customs.
Would have been seized.
Should have been, man. What's going on down there?
Not much. It's kind of quiet right now, to be honest with you. It's the times I've visited Vegas in the past, I'm usually here on a weekend. And it's usually, pool season, summertime, something to that effect. It's been very, for this area, chilly and raining since I landed, which was Sunday night. And it's been very, very quiet.
Artsy, has anyone, I know you're a famous football player, but has anyone come up and said, you're Luke Willson, the tight end from the Hawks? Have you got that yet?
Not yet, and to be honest with you, I'm staying a little bit off the beaten path. I'm at it's a new hotel, I guess, so the tables have been empty, and I'm just floating around right now. As I let you know, Parchy, this morning at 8:30 local time, a.m., I might add, I hit 4 aces on the pie gow table. I was pretty ecstatic about that because it paid me $20, ended up turning to $700. And it was a bit of a strange ordeal because I was the only person sitting at the pie gow table. I think everyone there was judging me. But, I got the last laugh. So I'm feeling pretty hot right now.
I love it. I love the fact that, did you at least get up and yell or high five the
No, he just scratched his diaper and then went to the next hand.
Yeah. He's been there for 12 hours.
Diaper guy.
Diaper guy. Yes, let's go.
Yes. No, but it's been, I got a feeling there's kind of a buzz right now here too, though, that this weekend is about to just be a wild scene. And it's almost like right now, again, we're a little early, but it's the calm before the storm. So it's kind of building. And again, I'm expecting this place, the rain is supposed to stop tonight. A little chilly this week, with cloudy, but again, not too bad. And then I got a feeling we're in for a good game too. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and I mean, as we get closer and closer to the game, obviously it becomes, a breakdown, an analysis, a prediction. But these are two teams that are so well coached. They're such good teams. They've both been in the dance before. Like, I think the storyline of, like, deer in the headlights, that's as far away as we've had in quite some time, I would suggest, in the Super Bowl. Don't you think, Luke? Like, I fully expect both these teams, veteran teams, well-coached teams, like, they're going to show up and be ready to play.
1,000%. And the next thing, Hayes, I'll say about that, which is kind of weird when you're like examining this, is right now I get the feeling that everybody, not everybody, but the majority of people are really leaning towards the Chiefs. And I get it. It's Patrick Mahomes. They've been here a million times, Andy Reid, etc. But if you look at the body of work, I'm talking week 1 all the way to now, the San Francisco 49ers have an argument here that they should be favored by, more than what they are. This team won 12 games this year. 10 of those wins were by more than one score. So 2 scores or more. And the other 2 wins were 7 points. They pretty much blew everybody out of the water. They had a very, very bad stretch where they were injured. They lost 3 in a row. And then you keep digging a little bit. Their 5th loss was the last week of the season when they weren't playing a bunch of their starters. So I kind of look at this thing and I'm like, it's a tale of 2 opposite teams, because the Chiefs, obviously in their wins, a lot of them are really greasy. They made a ton of mistakes. They just found a way to win. And then since they got to the playoffs, it's been flipped. The Niners, I thought, should have lost to the Packers, definitely should have lost to the Lions. And the Chiefs have came in and just have been in control of 3 playoff games, dismantled the Dolphins, played toe-to-toe with the Bills, found a way to win that, and then really surgically and tactically destroyed the Ravens. So I get why right now the Chiefs are kind of the flavor down here. They're giving them points. But I also understand, hey, in the reality of the situation here, this is a battle of 2 juggernauts, and it could be, again, one for the ages.
Luke, as far as the Niners are concerned, the 2 kind of inconsistent performances where they did come up with the W's, you'd have to be crazy to think that they would do that again in the Super Bowl. But on the other hand, they did it in 2 other elimination games. So it's like, why wouldn't they do it again? So, as a team that's in the Super Bowl, you're in the last game of the season. You would think that they would put together 4 quarters, wouldn't you?
I would think so. And again, but what was, cause for concern, O-Dog, for me with the Niners right now is after that rude awakening against the Packers in a game where, again, I thought they were very, very fortunate to win.
Yeah.
I would have thought that the next week at home against the Lions, they would have kind of figured things out. And again, in my opinion, a couple of poor coaching decisions. We've talked about that for a long time, kind of let the Niners back into this thing. And then the next thing I'll say, is Steve Wilkes and John Lynch, their GM, have mentioned that there's an effort problem on defense. And to hear that there's an effort problem, Jesus, I can't talk. Excuse me.
It's all good.
To hear that there's an effort problem. Vegas, man, got me.
Vegas.
An effort problem on defense in an NFC championship game is really, for me, the biggest concern of this whole ordeal. I am a big believer in karma to a degree. And just the idea that the Niners had quote unquote defensive effort issues in an NFC championship is like I said, definitely raised a couple eyebrows.
All right. Super Bowl 58, Chiefs Niners down in Vegas. He is Luke Willson, our TSN NFL analyst.
We were talking off air about, the antics that could potentially go on in Vegas. Have you ever, you've said even during the regular season, are there, correct us if I'm wrong, but are there guards or security on every level outside your room,
yes,
that type of stuff? So
yes.
How do you get around that? Have you heard of guys getting around that, either climbing out windows or
how hard is it to get around these guys?
Fake beard and mustache, walking out of a room. What have you heard of anything, any type of shenanigans that guys have tried to pull?
Yeah, I have not at the Super Bowl. One of my favorites was, in one of my younger years, I should say, an individual on our team took an extra large or double XL team hoodie and gave it to his girlfriend outside of, because no one's allowed on the floor. And what they do is, Noodles, like you were saying, they loop an alarm to both the stairwells. So if that door opens for any reason, alarm's going off. And then right outside the elevator is a cop and a security guard. So the only people on the floor are players only. No family, no friends, no nothing. And again, the way to kind of circumvent that was that a individual gave a double XL hoodie to his girlfriend and had her put the hood on and then walked her up the stairs and pretended like she was a player. Now, that might have fooled the security guard, but it didn't really fool the team when you have a 130-pound individual, okay, swimming in a double XL hoodie, and our team security guy is saying, "Who is this?" But what does happen, guys do push the envelope here and there. It's a pretty hefty one, but it's just a fine. So I don't think that there'll be anybody doing these things, but if they do, they're basically subjected to an internal fine. And again, generally does not, make any media or anything like that. And some guys will say, don't care. Fine me 10 grand. It is what it is. I got to do what I got to do. And then that's again, I guess it is what it is.
Yeah, it absolutely can be. So Brock Purdy obviously is down there, was taking part in the media night last night, and was asked about the idea of being labeled a game manager. And he said, quote, "I feel like it can be a compliment at times. Where it's like, all right, you got a guy that can come in and run the system well. I feel like that's a compliment. I think you're doing things right mentally, and obviously you're good enough to be able to hit guys that are open and make plays," end quote. Can you picture a scenario where Sunday night Niners win and the definition of Purdy changes? In other words, he goes off, massive game, 3 touchdowns, 320 yards in the air, runs for 50 yards. Like, can he go from game manager to something higher than that, higher status than that? Or is this just he's locked in and that's the way it's going to be? And if he wins, it's only going to solidify that reputation.
Yeah, Hayes, it's a great question. I think it's very, very unfair to Brock Purdy, but I don't think there's anything this guy can do in this game that will shake this awful narrative, which it is. And the reason I say that is you look at Brock Purdy's numbers this year, okay, and this was wild to me, but led the NFL in yards per attempt, led the NFL in EPA pass, the offense did. And in the last 40 seasons of football, he's number 1 in yards per attempt in a season. The next 4 guys, there's only 5 people who have been over 9. The next 4 guys all won NFL MVP that season. Okay. And you then think like, okay, let's try and poke a hole in this guy. His passer rating, well, outside the tackle box. So when I think of that, they're either rolling him out or he's had to scramble a little bit. Was I believe 125.6, which is higher. There was only 2 guys outside of him that were above 100. And he beat them both. Dak Prescott was 115. Lamar Jackson was 111. So you heard that right. Outside of the tackle box, he had a better passer rating than Lamar Jackson. And then the next thing I'll say against the blitz, this guy, passer rating, number 1 in the league. Touchdowns against the blitz, tied for number 1 in the league. Yards per attempt against the blitz, 10.1, number 1 in the NFL. Here's the craziest thing of all, is you look at this franchise he plays for, and clearly they have a lot of great players, a very storied franchise. 2 of them, I think, are 2 of the most famous quarterbacks of all time, Steve Young and Joe Montana. In 94, Steve Young had his highest ever passer rating. It was 112.8. He won Super Bowl MVP. In 89, Montana had his highest ever passer rating. It was 112.4. He also won Super Bowl MVP that year. Brock Purdy in his second year had a passer rating on the season of 113. So in year 2, this man has had a better passer rating than Joe Montana and Steve Young. And I'm not saying that he's these guys, but the reason I'm bringing up all of these crazy stats, and you guys know I'm not a diehard stats guy, is that there's just nothing more the man can do to shake this narrative. He literally has every stat you can fathom in his back pocket. And some people are still like, oh, he's a game manager. He's not that good. In my opinion, if this guy goes out and plays wildly poorly, the narrative should be what a great future he's still got. Doesn't matter. Look at the body of work. But for some odd reason, he's considered like the weakest link on this team. And that's the end of my rant at this moment.
It also seems like if he doesn't get it done this year, that it's almost like I know there was talk of Brady in the past year or so, but it's like they might look for some type of replacement.
Well, that's what I don't think that helps. that Shanahan's like admitting that he was kicking tires on Brady last year. I mean, it's if you're Purdy, you're like, wait a minute, man. Like now I'm your guy.
But liked me.
If it were up to you, it'd be Tom Brady up against Mahomes.
But that's just sports. That people are always sniffing around for something better.
Right, but we're talking narratives, right, Luke? Like narratives are driven by guys like Shanahan.
And I think Brady's in his own category. But the thing that I would say to anyone, let's say, again, we're playing hypotheticals here, but let's say that he doesn't get it done. Let's say he has a below average game. And all the people who say if the Niners get a quarterback. And my answer to you would be, get a quarterback to do what? Like I just went through, 7 stats? Get a quarterback who's better against the blitz? Doesn't exist in the NFL. Get a quarterback to have a better passer rating than Joe Montana? You already got one. Like, what is a Tom Brady going to do statistically, not in leadership qualities? I think, rumors Tom is one of the greatest locker room guys around. But what is Tom Brady or anyone else going to do statistically better than Brock Purdy did this year? The answer is nothing. And then the next thing that I'll say is this whole narrative like, oh, he's got great players around him. Of course he does. He has a ton of great players. But how many times have you heard of teams that are loaded at the skill position and you're like, man, if this team could ever get a quarterback, they'd be great. Like, my whole thing is like people talk about this guy like he's replaceable. And it's like, look at some of the other quarterback situations or guys that are considered way better than him and how they fared. I look at a guy, I love this guy. I loved him last year. Didn't really love how he played this year, but Jalen Hurts, Jalen Hurts this year had a ton of weapons and the entire thing fell apart. And my point is, again, Jalen Hurts and Brock are two very different players, but it's like, I'm not sure who else you can bring in that's going to be able to replicate what Brock Purdy has done. And just because it's not, the most highlight reel plays, every other, scramble, if you will, is not a bad thing. So I feel for the guy because I'm not sure what more this man could have done. He literally has a better passer rating than the highest year of Steve Young and Joe Montana. I mean, I'm not making this up. The last 40 years, he has the highest yards per attempt ever. It's like, what are we talking about here?
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Hurts. I quickly want to ask you about Jalen Hurts, others down there at the Pro Bowl getting punked by Dan Orlovsky, who Orlovsky beat them in the accuracy event. And are they embarrassed by that? Like, do they have to answer for that? Because some of the muffins that Hurts was throwing were really like Peyton Manning in his last year.
That might have been his version of Kucherov at the All-Star.
Dan, I don't really care that much.
Hungover.
Yeah, where do you stand on that, Luke?
And it's funny because I follow Dan online and he's always been like, hey, these guys are way better than me, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, I do think that it's embarrassing. If I'm a quarterback there and maybe they don't find it this way. And first and foremost, we got to remember Dan Orlovsky played, I believe, 12 years in the NFL.
Right.
So it's not like some random guy. And everyone will say, oh, he was a backup. You play 12 years in the NFL at the quarterback position, especially as a backup, you can sling the pill. Okay, that's just a fact. But to have a current guy or current guys out here and lose to, Dan Orlovsky in an accuracy contest, it was kind of a bit of a head scratcher. And I do find it embarrassing. And it's one of those things where I'm just like, I think that this offseason in particular, there'll be a really big shift in narrative of this position. And what I mean by that is, you'll have guys that are going to look at Patrick Mahomes and say, we get that, and we're going to be, right there. You think Lamar Jackson, I think, even Jalen Hurts. Let's go back to last year. Like these super freak athletes that can also throw the ball at a very, very high level. But I really do think Brock Purdy is starting to define a new narrative for a lot of GMs that are like, hey, we don't have the luxury of getting a top 5 quarterback. In the draft, I'm saying. We don't have that. But what we do have is maybe some cap space. Maybe, we can wiggle a few things around, try and find a great tight end, try and find a really dominant left tackle, and try and find a guy like Brock Purdy that you're going to sit here and say, I can depend on every one of this guy's decisions. He's going to make the right call. He's going to sit at the line. It's going to keep pre-snap. Everything's going to look fluid. He's going to get everybody blocked up right, and he's going to be accurate. So I do think that it's kind of a telling sign where, Dan Orlovsky might be the old school style quarterback, tall guy, not super mobile maybe, can sling it pretty good. We've shifted to, a bit of a combination of athlete and throwers, and just straight playmakers. And perhaps now there'll be some teams, again, that don't have the luxury of getting that guy, because clearly you look at Mahomes, look at Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, I'd put in that conversation as a guy who can really use his feet as well. That's the goal, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have no shot without that person.
Where are you at with Cadarius Toney? We had a spirited debate on whether he would dress or he would actually take a snap or get thrown a ball or get a touchdown. Where are you at with him?
I don't think you'll see Cadarius Toney in the Super Bowl. Again, we'll see how it goes here, Noodles. But my thought process is, and I know he kind of cleaned up or explained his Instagram rant where it was just very, very bizarre. But right now, a guy that I really like is, MVS for them. Not that he's going to blow up the stat sheet by any means, but he's kind of their deep threat, a ton of speed. And against the Bills, he had a couple big catches, really changed that game. And against the Ravens, he had the game closing one, which was a huge shot. So you've got that guy. Kelsey has obviously done his thing in the playoffs. I think, too, just the way they're going to do this thing, I expect Pacheco to be heavily involved, in the run game. And that's going to bring Noah Gray in, another tight end for them, and a big receiver in Justin Watson. So it's like, where even is Toney's role?
Parts,
and I would say that
decoy Partsy, you just throw him out there. It's like the chubby guy in tight jeans. No one's going to throw it to this guy, but you actually do. It's the ultimate decoy.
I mean, that could work, but I think that their guy now would be Richie James. He hasn't, done a ton, but I think Richie James is kind of a little more trusted in that Cadarius Toney style role. But again, time will tell.
Yeah, that's the problem. You throw it to him as a decoy, and it goes off the guy's helmet.
Yeah.
And
then you look like a jackass.
and you're like, why is that guy in the field?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't see it happen. I think it'd be crazy to put Cadarius Toney anywhere.
There's got to be a prop bet on this guy actually dressing or being in or, getting thrown at least one.
That's another part of it. You can even have him on the field. Mahomes is not going to throw to that cat. Like, that's the whole, like, the programming of a whole season would lead Mahomes to say, I don't care what he's doing. I'm not throwing the ball to that guy.
Fair enough.
And I don't blame him. Anyway, All right, buddy. Well, picks on Friday, right? Al's brother, he's already been back. He was cruising. He was at a card show. This guy got right off the ship and went right to St. Catharines for a card show.
What a dedicated athlete, that's for sure.
Like, it never stops. It never stops, man. I love it.
Real quick, though, I just want to put this out here about the picks. I mean, obviously, we're down 4 here. I've been told there's props involved. Doogie is withholding information from Team Owen Wilson. So I'd like to know what exactly the situation is so I can get to prepping and we can make the greatest comeback of all time. It's 28-3 right now. Team Owen Wilson will consult O-Dog. We'll obviously get Team Prez Rod in, #Regi, and we'll be ready to rumble on Friday. Right. But I need to know what we're picking.
All right. Well, Doogie, that's a good point. I think Doogie needs to establish that by tomorrow, and by Friday it's go time, and it'll be a draft. You guys can pick. You won your regular season. It has not affected us one iota in the playoffs, but we're talking spread, we're talking total, we're talking props, all that good stuff, courtesy of FanDuel. So
#Regi Partsy.
All right, there he is, Luke Willson, live from Vegas. Luke, later in the week with Al's brother.
Odds, information, gut instinct.
So,
Regi.
So, did you see it was floating around? A couple people sent it to OverDrive. One of these cruises had some outbreak of like stomach flu or some sort of like where
that
people were like,
nightmare.
Do you imagine
that is nightmare fuel? Like
1,400 people on a boat.
That's the kind of stuff where like the coast, like the patrols, like you're not allowed back on land.
Yeah,
dude, I think that happened during COVID.
It did.
There was people stuck on boats for months.
Right, they didn't let them dock. They're like, you got to stay out there, man. you imagine that? You go
Just
like,
stuck in your
oh,
room.
God,
It'd
being
be
on a
awful.
ship, you'd just be so miserable.
Ah.
The food would be like,
All
you
I was
could,
thinking of, do you
it would
remember
just be
Frank
terrible.
Costanza when he was the cook in the army?
yes,
he
and during
poisoned
like the
his-
Korean War or something.
He poisoned everybody.
Yeah.
And then he cooked again, and he was having flashbacks. People were
God, that would
puking.
be
and
just the most disgusting situation
All I could
ever.
think of. But Al's
That's why
brother-
cruises, man. I've never been on one, and I really have no interest.
I've
in
been
ever
on
doing
one.
it.
I enjoyed myself. It was 7 days.
I've heard they're awesome. Don't get me wrong. You've been an advocate for that. Al's brother,
Only
that's
one,
a lifestyle.
though. It's not like I'm going. Like Al's brother goes. It seems like every second week.
He's claiming that he had like an upgraded status after this cruise. That he's like 5-star now or something.
Because he goes on one like once
like
a month.
literally, this guy's
He
walking
has
on there like,
elevated status.
yeah, he's like Frank Sinatra on these ships,
He
man.
makes a phone call and there's just food and beverage delivered right to his room.
Absolutely,
I love
it's
it.
on ice. It's waiting for him. Champagne waiting for him.
Panel, like, let's get Al's brother a 4-man panel on a cruise ship for 4 days.
That would be epic content.
Us?
Any of us walking around Al's just in his entourage on a cruise.
We do shows from the cruise.
That's
for
a 30
4 days.
for 30.
That would
That's
be
a 30 for 30. With you had like a body cam on him 24 hours a day.
That's right. Yeah, that would be. All right. Looking back on the Leaf loss last night, the Raptor loss last night. Scotty Barnes, though, on his way to the All-Star game. It's a big one for him. I mean, he's had a great season. He has, and that is a highlight if you're a Raptor fan. We all know where this season's likely going. The trade deadline later in the week. So more on that, and Ryan Rishaug coming up as well. The Oilers are in Vegas tonight, so we'll start looking ahead to that. They're going for their 17th straight. Pretty incredible what's going on with the Oilers. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, this week we're giving away Leafs tickets, Leafs Flyers, February 15th, plus throwing in a $250 Vanilla Visa prepaid card with each pair of tickets to make it the ultimate game night. Vanilla Visa prepaid cards are available for purchase at Petro Canada. Your player of the day today is Mikhail Renberg. Mike Renberg.
Wow. Michael Renberg.
Yeah, Michael Renberg, Legion of Doom. Right?
That was a serious line, and he was a serious player and a serious part of it.
Yeah, he really was. John LeClaire at 50, I think, that
John
year.
LeClaire's stick was
Eric
ridiculous.
Lindros.
Did you ever see his stick?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a
9-iron.
straight wedge. It was like a wedged. It was almost half right-handed.
Yeah.
It was a really great, and he was just in and around the net, just
Yeah.
top shelf, like rebounds, boom, under the bar.
Yeah,
Then
he was-
Lindros, that lunatic, just skating around, terrifying
just
people.
skated through everybody. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Through everybody. And
That's a
then-
great name, the Legion of Doom.
Yeah.
What a great name for a
Just
line.
What if you're a part of that line? You're like, we were terrifying people.
Yeah. There was,
Yeah,
I remember
pretty good.
playing Philly. Remember that Shell Samuelson, that big defenseman? And he was yelling at Ray, yelling at our bench. And he's kind of like a big mutant, but he didn't speak great English, and his tongue was hanging out. And Ray was giving it to him, like, put your tongue in your mouth, Marmaduke. He was calling him Marmaduke, the dog.
Yeah.
And he was so mad. Like, he was chasing Ray around the ice. Like, Ray was pretty sharp back then.
Oh, yeah.
Like, think of being
Back
a
then, he's
mouthpiece
still
back
sharp.
then. I know, but back then on the ice, like, you say stuff out there, you get a fist in
You
the
gotta
face.
answer
You got to
for it.
answer
Yeah.
for it. Nowadays, you could chirp. Back then, if you said something, you had to back it up. And Ray would just give it to people from
Yeah.
the bench. I would laugh.
Good for him.
Oh.
Good for him. All right, Oilers, 16 in a row. They're tying the record with a win tonight. But it's a big one, right? Like, listen, you don't have to make any explanation or any excuse for winning 16 in a row.
Right.
It is incredibly difficult, clearly. But they have not played like world beater after world beater after world beater.
Right.
They've had some pretty bad teams in there, and that will not be the case tonight. Like Vegas, I think it's a very symbolic game because of their history, because of where Vegas is at, what Edmonton's been doing. Here's Ryan Rishaug from Edmonton. Do you see it the same way, Brian? The symbolism of them, the Oilers possibly tying this record against, a team that's had their number in the past in Vegas.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that was a tough loss for them last year, and a lot of people
All
felt
right, we
that.
got to throw him on
In a lot of ways,
mute or hold or
could've been
something.
Almost gave to Bill O'Reilly.
No,
like,
I've never heard that before. It was like staticky.
Fuzz Patrol. You
Like he's
gotta call the
over,
Fuzz Patrol.
he's over DeGero, I think,
Yeah,
or
so that
Skype.
should
I
be
don't
a
know.
very, very clean connection, but it was like there was.
I'm good. It's all good, man. Everyone's having a good time.
Immediately, I checked for a look.
Everyone's having a very good time.
We're all good. But it's, you're right, because Vegas is a team, like, it is symbolic because Vegas knocked them off and won the Stanley Cup.
Mm-hmm.
So if Edmonton wins tonight, I'm worried about that trap.
I am too, man. I could see Anaheim, our boy, standing on his head, 54 stops. They lose 2-1.
Dostal, yeah.
Because if you get through Vegas tonight, you have to set the record in Anaheim. It's got to
be a must-win.
You have to beat the Ducks. And then I think they lose to L.A., personally. New coach, coming off a bye. L.A.'s like reset. They got to get their season back on track. That's got history, too, considering they've played each other, I believe, back-to-back years in the playoffs, and Edmonton beat them both times.
Yeah.
All right, we got Ryan. You going to give it a shot here? Ryan, you got us, buddy?
Check 1, 2.
There you go. We're good, man.
Check 1, 2.
We're good.
Check test.
Break down the game for us tonight. How are we feeling out there in Edmonton?
Yeah, I mean, the record's a big deal, right? The teams, they're trying not to make too big a deal of it, but a chance to tie some hockey history and then maybe set some a little bit later on in the week. I think it's a big deal. Pretty unreal, this role that they're on. Like, pretty unconscionable what they've been able to do. I think the point you make about the quality of competition is fair. I mean, they have not played a lot of world beaters in this time, but sometimes that's the way it goes. Sometimes it sets up for you to go on a bit of a run based on some softness in the schedule and softness in the opponents, and good for teams that can take advantage of it, and that's what they've done. You guys will be thrilled to know that we had Jason Strudwick make a prediction on a 14-game stretch, what he thought the Oilers would do during this time. And I'll remind you, they're 14-0 in that time. He had them at 9-5. So that's where Struddy, his head was at on that.
Okay, all right.
We don't care what that guy says.
Him and his tight pants.
Rish, we were talking earlier about like coach bumps and the amount of coaches that are getting fired in desperation time. Like, I don't think you could have seen this turnaround. I don't know if anybody did in the National Hockey League of what Edmonton is doing. Like, what the hell did Knobloch say to these guys or get them to believe in to see this kind of turnaround and have them be in a position to tie this record tonight?
Yeah, the coaching discussion and how it applies to this turnaround is an interesting one, right? Because I think you guys would all agree that everybody felt like it was going to turn at some point for the Oilers. It was not going to stay that bad. They were just too good a team for that. But to your point, though, nobody saw it turning quite the way it has. I mean, this has been unbelievable. He's at a 16-game heater, and oh, by the way, he had an 8-game heater before that as well. Like, it's been pretty impressive. So my observations on what he's done: didn't come in and overhandle the puck, right? Subtle changes, subtle adjustments. Something as simple as taking all the defensemen in the locker room who were scattered all over the place and saying, I want you all sitting together over there. So we put all the defensemen together in the locker room, sitting in the same spot. Subtle change. Is that the reason the blue line has turned it around? Probably not. Paul Coffey has been a good addition as well. Some subtle things. He leaves his lines together for longer. He doesn't shuffle them around as much. He gives guys an opportunity to get a feel. He doesn't change winning lineups. He leaves guys in. He's given everybody a role. He said to the guys that were on the third and fourth line, you're going to be penalty killers and you're going to be relied on. And their penalty kill has been unbelievable. They've allowed one power play a goal against in their last 12. So subtle tweaks, not overhandling it, and empowering everybody to take a bite out of this thing.
Now, we just talked about how crazy this run has been. It wasn't that long ago when Knobloch was taking over. Like, there were so many question marks, and I'm sure that, you guys out in Edmonton had the same question marks. Because the narrative was, this guy's never coached in the National Hockey League. It's McDavid's guy. Oh, and Paul Coffey's coming out of the press box to coach for the first time in the National Hockey League. I remember watching your show or even being on it. I can't remember, but you guys saying, like, this is a fork in the road for this organization, this management group, everything, this ownership. And it's gone one way, but it wasn't that long ago it could have gone the other way. Yeah, I mean, at the time, there were some red flags being fired up into the air, right? For all the reasons you just laid out, Noodles. I mean, McDavid's old junior coach and Paul Coffey at the right hand of the owner is now going to be on the bench to see what's going on. And just some things that were going on. Who made the decision? Ken Hall and Jeff Jackson, right? Where was all this coming from?
for sure there were red flags. But bottom line, everything has worked out. You talk to any blue liner on this team about the impact Paul Coffey has had, and it's been massive. Not because he pulls out the whiteboard and does a bunch of X's and O's. And my understanding is there's not a ton of tactical stuff that Paul Coffey's digging into with the players. Mark Stewart helps out on that front quite a bit. With Paul Coffey, it's just about guys, how they're feeling. Guys being in the right mindset, empowering guys, trying to cut out little mistakes while empower. Like, his impact on the blue line has been fantastic. Well, we sort of wondered what that dynamic would look like. Chris Knobloch, right? How many short lists would Chris Knobloch have been on if it were an off season, right? Maybe a few. I don't want to take anything away from him. Certainly wasn't at the top of anybody's list in terms of that's a real obvious one. But Jeff Jackson had a history with him, gave him the job, and it's worked out fantastic. So, yeah, there were questions, and I believe they were fair ones, but you got to give it to him. Everything has worked out absolutely peaches so far.
With Ryan Rishaug, Oilers going for 17 straight in Vegas tonight. They've got 37 games left. Connor McDavid currently sits at 67 points on the year. Give us a prediction on his point total at the end of the year.
A prediction. What do you say he's at right now? 67?
He's at 67 with 37 games left to play.
Yeah, well, if the question is Connor McDavid going to go nuclear and win the scoring race? I don't see it. I don't think that that's what this is setting up to be. And I don't think that that's really in his frame of mind at this point. I would pose the question to you guys a little bit. Do you think that McDavid not being in the thick of the scoring race has maybe allowed him to not have to be concerned about that at all and just focus on winning games? Like, just play the way you got to play night in, night out. Not that he would have been cheating or selfish. I'm not saying that, but neither one of these guys are anywhere near it. So their only focus is, what do we got to do to win tonight? And without having that extra thing on their mind, I wonder if it's freed them up a little bit. So I think he'll continue at the pace that he's been on. I can't do the quick math and figure out where that lands him, but I don't think he's going nuclear, if that's what you're asking me, because I don't think that's what's going to be required for this team to get to where it wants to be necessarily. And, I wonder if maybe they're playing a little more free, not having to worry about that stuff.
Ryan, so let's say you're Ken Holland right now. Where are you addressing your needs heading into the deadline or up to the deadline to kind of tweak this group to, help get them over the top potentially?
Yeah, the big question we're often debating in town here right now is, can Ken Holland get away with not trading his first-round pick? Are they good enough that they don't need that significant monster ad like they had last year with Ekholm? Can he hang on to that? Maybe use that for something in the offseason. Maybe gives you a bit of a sense for where his head potentially is at here. I could see an upgrade in their top six up front on the right side. Warren Foegele currently occupies a spot in the top six. I'm not sure if heading into the playoffs, if that's necessarily the mix that you're looking for. So a veteran forward who can play center and can play wing that could moonlight in your top six. I could see that as being a need. Need to show up the blue line a little bit too. They've had no injuries this year on the blue line. It's been unreal how healthy they've been. Philip Broberg is the next man up. Good player. Not a lot of experience there. And I think we've all seen in the past, you need to be 8 defensemen deep to really be able to go on a good playoff run. So I would say depth blue liner, potentially a top 6 or 7 forward. And guys, I'm going to say nothing on the goaltending front. I think they're going to stay with what they have between Skinner, Pickard, and Jack Campbell's even coming on in the minors right now. And they've got one of the better young goalies in the AHL in Rodrigue as well. So I think they're going to stand pat in net. As crazy as that is to say, considering where we were a few months ago.
Rish, how long do you guys get to just enjoy the hockey and McDavid and the way they're playing? I know in this market, regardless of what happens on the ice, it always leads into one of the star players' contracts. Like, how long before in Edmonton do people's contracts start popping up? You know who I'm talking about, Draisaitl, McDavid. For sure. Is it just like, let's enjoy this run while it happens, and when that stuff comes up, we'll deal with it then?
Well, not to take over the show or try and produce it, but what you're talking about is a conversation around, if Leon Draisaitl won't extend this summer, can you let him go into his unrestricted year? Right? That's what we're talking about. He's up after next season, which means the negotiation really gets underway for real this summer. And if he's not willing to sign on the dotted line, are you going to walk him into his unrestricted year and potentially lose that player for nothing, should he choose to go to unrestricted free agency? Then the other complication, what's his dollar look like? Like, really, what does his dollar look like? You know, guys, people might think I'm absolutely out of my mind for saying this, but I'm telling you, 13, 14, for what this player has accomplished, get ready.
Absolutely.
I think we're going to be talking in that.
Oh, it's more than that.
Right?
Matthews just signed 13.25. I'd be shocked if it was a penny less. It shouldn't be.
Oh, well, that's what I'm saying. Start thinking 14 range.
Absolutely.
Is kind of where I'm getting at here. So then the problem is you got McDavid the next year where you got to start negotiating with him. So if Draisaitl's at 14, say, what's the number for Connor? And is there
20.
any way to kind of coordinate it so that there's a big enough piece of the pie for everybody?
Yeah.
This is a tough needle to thread, guys. So it's already started, quite frankly, starts for real this summer. And we'll see the debate. Should they walk Draisaitl into his unrestricted year if they can't get a deal done? And the other thing to remember here, guys, Draisaitl probably been underpaid about $4 million a year for the last, 5 years?
Yeah.
That's $20 million that he's left on the table. I wouldn't blame Leon Draisaitl one bit if he was like, I'm going to get that money.
Yeah.
Love it here. I've had a great time. I'm going to get that money.
I'm with you on that, man. I buckle up. It's coming, and he deserves it. He's been one of the 5 best players in the league for years. Yeah. I mean, that's just who he is and what he's built up. Oilers Golden Knights tonight. It should be a fun one. Enjoy it, Ryan. We'll do it again soon. Thank you, buddy.
All right, great to chat, guys. Oh, thanks for not calling me a cheater today, bud. I know you're biting your tongue.
I'd love to know what you got up to on that golf course out in Arizona, you cheating rat. I'd love it.
As soon as someone else starts having a decent day, half-decent day, questions their character.
Yeah.
You can book it.
I hear you. It is gutless behavior by him, but now you know what I deal with every single day.
You know what?
I deal with it all the time.
You screwed over Bob McKenzie. If you could do that, Rish, I don't know what else you could accomplish in life. So that was a dirty trick, but you know what? We'll move on from it.
I don't know who's got it worse, Hayes. I got Struds to deal with. You got this guy to deal with. I'm not sure I'd trade you, but neither of us have it great, pal.
I hear you, buddy. Enjoy yourself. Say hi to Struddy for us.
All right. Yeah, take care.
There it is, Ryan Rishaug. Draisaitl this summer, like it's a very good point. Like it's the same thing we just went through with Matthews and Nylander. And
dude, if this was Toronto, we would have already had 10 shows about the contract.
I'm sure they're having it. I mean, you have to, and he's connected to McDavid so much.
Yeah, I think the two of them are. They would have to come up with a plan for themselves. Like, what are we doing here? That's why I've been saying this.
Do you think they would tell each other what they're ultimately thinking?
I think there's probably a layer.
I think they're really
best
close.
I think they're best buddies.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they've had over a few beers, like candid conversations, like, what does the next 5 years look for us? Do you want to be here? You know, are we going to be here if we win? Like I've said this all along. I believe this. I don't know if this is true or anything. I think McDavid wants to win in Edmonton. Like, that is his focus.
And I bet you talk about sitting down and having beers and conversations. They probably have, and I don't know this, obviously.
Yeah, we're just talking.
Maybe we got to win one here, and then after that, go ahead and do whatever.
That's my point. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think the two of them have probably had that conversation. Is like, if we win here, all bets are off. Mm-hmm. Let's see, but we got to win here. What does that look like?
Right, and that's a part of the legacy, right?
Yeah.
Like Gretzky won in Edmonton, Lemieux won in Pittsburgh, Sid won in Pittsburgh, Taves won in Chicago, Ovi won in Washington. Like, where you start your career, drafted, develop, play, that's your team. You know, you don't want to have to leave to chase it. You want to win one there.
And they're kind of in their wheelhouse, and the team is built for, this is probably one of their better built teams.
Yeah.
So you're thinking, okay, like if it's this year or next year, like we got to figure this out. But that's probably the conversations they are having.
And they got to have answers, though, because like Edmonton's calling Draisaitl on July 1, saying, let's do it right now. Like, Edmonton would put anything in front of him. And the way the NHL works is whoever went before, the next guy comes up and goes and pushes the bar further ahead. And Matthews just signed for 13.25. Draisaitl's going to sign for more than that.
But it might be
13.3, 13.5.
If
Who knows?
Draisaitl says, yeah, I think we can do it in the next 3 years. Maybe that's what he's looking for.
It might be a 2 or 3 year deal.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Like they've got to basically hand him a blank check and say, if they don't win this year, then what's your window?
Yeah. And McDavid will be the same thing. Whatever they want is what they're going to get. It's just like Matthews.
Yeah.
They want to sign a 1-year deal, that's what they'll sign.
Yeah.
And if it's an 8-year deal, that's what they'll sign. I mean, it's totally up to them.
Yeah.
Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, the Leafs will have Dallas in town tomorrow. Scotty Barnes on his way to the All-Star game. We'll look ahead to that. And, of course, we're coming off an Oiler game tonight. The Jets are playing tonight. Vancouver's playing tonight.
Yeah.
Lindholm making his debut. Monahan making his debut. One step closer to the Super Bowl and Super Bowl picks.
Yes.
Right? Al's brother will be rejoining us. He's been...
When are we doing the picks? Friday or Saturday?
I think
Thursday
Friday.
or Friday?
I think Friday.
And there's no +4 or whatever. It is even, Steven. We clubbed you guys during the regular season. You made a comeback. It's an even Steven draw. We have a bunch of different picks for the Super Bowl. Whoever wins that is the champion.
You think so?
Absolutely. Doogie, agreed or not?
We'll vote on that.
He's sleeping back there.
It's all good, Doogie.
We'll see.
All
We'll
right,
see.
Doogie is on the straight and narrow now. He's no longer
the handshake.
Doogie, you have to admit it's all even. Like we had a great regular
How is it all
season.
even? We've had playoff picks.
So we work our ass off for 17 weeks, and you come back with 2 good weeks, and you guys all of a sudden are like the
like in the playoffs.
The Leafs could say that
exactly.
every
The Leafs
year.
like, oh, we deserve a conference final here because we work so hard.
Even Steven, this is the whole shooting match right here.
Okay, we're out of here. Good stuff, Doogie, JP, Joe from the Bridge, everyone behind the scenes. Thank you for all of your help today. Thank you to everyone for tuning in today, radio, TV, podcast, web. We appreciate it. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at...
May everyone get home and their couch be there. 4 p.m.
We'll check that.